Hey, what's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Today, guys, we are returning to the My Favorite LJN tournament. We are drawing closer to the finish line here in round one. We are down to our last two episodes. Today, episode 39. Now, today we actually just got in the two Macho Man variants from the figure collection store. So at the end of round one, I am going to do a review on those two new Macho Man figures. So I'm really excited about doing those videos or making that video with you guys. Not a whole lot to talk about here at the beginning of this episode. So luckily, we will be able to dive right into the tournament. And yeah, maybe not have a 45-minute episode this time around. My goal is to try to get 30 minutes, guys. Every video, I'd like to get a 30-minute episode in, but I keep hovering around 45, and it's driving me nuts. Because I know you guys don't want to watch a 45-minute episode, but I do what I can. Alright, let's dive right into today's matchup, which is going to feature Honky Tonk Black. And does that say KO? I think that says KO. I could have sworn we did the Honky Tonk Man Black already. Unless we did the other Honky Tonk Man Black, but I don't think so. I will have to look at the notes and verify that one. But Honky Tonk Man Black will face Coco Beware. And I am surprised Coco Beware wasn't in the last video because it seems like every freaking video we do, we have duplicate figures. This one was Brett Fancy, as I call him. And he will square off against Kane from John Ruggiero. And then we've got, wow, Roddy Piper. You're telling me we haven't seen a Roddy Piper yet? Well, Roddy Piper original, that is. And he will take on Jim Duggan Blue. So I think we've seen the Jim Duggan with the cracked body. So we have seen a blue Jim Duggan, so I know which one that is. And this one is going to be Jim Neidhart in pink from Robert Jackson. And he will square off against Hercules. And after that, we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches, or 7 figures left. So I have to find an 8th figure to add. I don't have any figures due in. And I think I've seen all of the figures. I'm trying to look at my shelf right now. I think I've seen all of them. Unless there's... I guess I could pull one of the additional Hogans. Because there were a couple of red shirt Hogans that I didn't pull. Scratch that. There is one red shirt Hogan custom that I didn't pull. Because it's basically a red shirt Series 5 Hogan repaint. And the other repaint that's just like it, I did pull because it came with a painted on cross. So that right there made it a little bit different. But yeah, man, I'm looking at the shelf and we've looked at every single freaking figure. The only other thing I could do is there is a black Elizabeth that somebody attempted to paint to look like Sherry Martel. But it is a absolute horrid paint job. I could probably include that figure. It would be a wash of a matchup, but you know what? I'll just pull that one because it'll be different, and I could call it Sherry Martel. Because every other figure we've already looked at, yeah, there's nothing missing. So yeah, I'll do that. Anyways, I will go ahead and pull these figures, and we will begin in a split second. Alright, folks. Alright, so I went through my notes here, and it looks like Honky Tonk Man Raider Nation was already featured. And where did I see him? Episode 11. And he defeated Rick Martel by Mark Hackenberg. So I put on here Honky Tonk Man Black, KL for Kenny Lester, but I'm thinking that I may have just saw Honky Tonk Man Black, and I may have pulled thinking that was the Raider Nation figure. So I am going to pull this Honky Tonk Man today. This is not the Raider Nation. I'm not sure where I got this one from, but this Honky Tonk Man will square off against Coco Beware. Now, I kind of said in the last video that if the Raider Nation Honky Tonk Man were to square off against the Raider Nation Coco Beware, the Raider Nation Honky Tonk Man was going to win. They are my two favorite pieces from the Raider Nation, but this right here is a whole completely different avenue. So we'll start with this version of Honky Tonk Man. This one is not done very well. So you kind of look at this figure. His face and chest is all kind of like mutilated. Like there's so much paint that's kind of like bleeding through and whatnot. Yeah, the figure is really sticky all around. I don't know where I got this. Stinger GQ. Because every time I talk about buying a figure from a random seller, it's always seems to be Stinger GQ. But his stuff is auctions, so I don't think I would have paid a whole lot of money on this figure. And when you based on the condition, no. $25. Now, I'm pretty sure figures like this I could always send to somebody else, like Rob Jackson, for example, and hey man, can you fix this? And he can work miracles, but I'm probably not gonna do that. It's for me, for what I need from it. I already have a black Honky Tonk Man from the Raider Nation, and it looks beautiful. The black and gold, fantastic. This is just a secondary figure. In fact, I'd probably much rather try to sell this and make money off of it than try to spend more money and creating something different, because I've got a ton of Honky Tonk Man figures. So this is not a winner of this tournament. I already know that. Is it good enough to make it to round 2? Realistically, any Honky Tonk Man figure, whether you're talking about original or any of its customs, any of those figures can make it to round 2, round 3, etc. It's all based on who that particular figure is going to square off against. This could be original blue with blue face bleed, or blue paint bleed throughout the entire body, and it still could move on to the next round, right? Now, this particular figure did not come from my main display. This is one of my secondary collections. Well, what do I mean secondary collections? Technically, this is probably like my third collection. It's like, dude, how many collections you got? Alright, so you guys, when you guys see my room tour, on my back wall here, you've got the main loose LJN collection all side by side, right? On the back wall. The secondary collection I keep right here next to my Remco figures, my Remco customs, and a little glass display case where my Hasbros are. So that wrestling ring right there, I keep a lot of duplicates. Basically, a lot of the figures that I really covet and I want to keep, either for videos like this, or if one day I ever decide stop being lazy, have some fun, and wrestle these guys, I want to keep some of my favorite figures, right? But also on the back wall, or the front wall technically, where all my carded LJNs are, there is a big LJN ring, and all LJN figures that come with accessories, I consider that to be a sort of third collection. So Again, all figures, LJN wise, that come with accessories were in that ring. So, yeah, that's where I got this one. So, yeah, there is a reason to my madness of collecting. And I always say I buy these figures, I buy the accessories because I want to put the accessories with the figures so that it's more appealing to buyers, so that they don't have to go searching for the figure. They don't have to go searching for the loose individual piece, or have to spend more money to buy another secondary figure plus accessory, etc. Plus, you guys know I'm not going to rip anybody off. I'm going to offer fair market value for what I sell my products for. But it's hard, man. When you own something, it is hard to let go of it. And because I have so many uses for these things, it's like for not just display. Well, yeah, for display wise, for decorative reasons, it's hard to sell them. But this particular figure may not be in the best condition. I didn't want to pull my main figure off the back wall, kind of mess with the LJN stands. So, and it sucks because a lot of time when you're looking at the figures, the graphics is what you're looking at, right? And when you look at a figure and it doesn't have the best graphics, or it's faded, it can impact your decision. And Coco Beware, original figure, any of his customs, it doesn't matter. I think this is a spectacular figure. Same thing with the Honky Tonk Man. I do think that either figure, custom or original, both figures are really neck and neck. Like, if you're rating the figures, let's say 6.9. Maybe this is a 6.8, or vice versa. So when I say neck and neck, they are so close together. Neither of these figures are going to win this tournament. But both figures, regardless of which one you choose, aren't just round 2 figures. They have legitimate chances to move on to the second or third round, or second, third, fourth round if necessary. I'm going to go with Coco Beware, though. This black Honky Tonk Man isn't going to beat my other black Honky Tonk Man, that's for sure. And it gets an opportunity for another Coco Beware figure. So I think I do have multiple Honky Tonk Mans in round 2. So, next battle is going to feature as what I classify as Brett Fancy, as he squares off against John Ruggiero's Kane. So this is actually a tougher matchup than you might think, because in all honesty, first glance, I say Kane is an absolute shoo-in. But I want to talk about it because I just don't want to jump the gun. So, we will start with the Bret Hart figure. Per usual, I got all these figures, and I box them up. I send them to Eric. I'm like, hey man, here's these figures. This is what I want, customized. Some of them, they're just repaints. Other times, like I talked about, putting Big John Studd's arms on King Kong Bundy as example. I think that's like one of the very few times, probably the only time I've ever asked him to cut up a figure for me, reshape it into something that I want to kind of create the most perfect figure. But when I got the Bret Hart figure, I told him I wanted the Hasbro Series 8 look of the figure. And when you look at it, overall, he did a freaking remarkable job. But I talked about these figures that I sent him back in early 2022, and I just got this box in a couple months ago, and I'm like, dude, and it was kind of messed up because he told me, like, you're still gonna have to put some work into it. They're not finished. And I'm like, at this point, man, I just want the figures. I understand that of the 10,000 figures I bought or paid for, you're not going to have them all ready for me. I just want whatever you can send me. Something right now is better than nothing. But I mean, he got me exactly what I wanted. This going off of this paint scheme. This is what I wanted. He did a great job in that respect. So I am not mad for what this is. Like I said, I haven't looked at his earlier work that I've gotten from him and kind of getting this. I guess maybe I am kind of sour on the fact that it took so friggin' long to get this box in, and that it took so because of the communication wasn't as great, and the turnaround time was poor. Maybe I'm sour on that, and I just wasn't able to really sit back and enjoy the figures as much as I had in the past. In the past, I got the figures back in probably a couple months, and I could look at the figures and I'm like, oh man, this is freaking killer. But nowadays, I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it would have been nice if I got it, way back when. But another thing, he upgraded, and I'll put parentheses or quotes around the word upgrade. One of the things he said he was going to do is kind of give a upgraded variant to the head. And I got to admit, I do not like this at all. I think original LJN head of Bret Hart is far superior. I don't know. I don't like this. Maybe when I look at the head, maybe it's like a very old face of Bret Hart. Because maybe that's like Bret Hart at like age 50 or 60. So when I look at this, it just doesn't look like Bret to me. And he also found this guy online that sells like this little plastic sunglasses and little band. And he's like, yeah, he recommended it to me. So I'm like, okay. And the guy was selling a couple different things, like maybe $15 for a couple things. And I put an offer for like $12 or so for just the sunglasses, thinking that it was something special. And I got them in. I looked at these and I'm like, what the hell? I paid $12 plus shipping and taxes on this. So yeah, I mean this whole entire thing was just not my cup of tea. It could have been worse, but man, I was just expecting the world. Like I said, the paint job is fine. The design, he did a good job. You guys should have seen the Don Morocco figure that I kind of painted, because I'm not an artist. I don't know how to draw, sketch, paint, do anything design wise. I just had a really beat up Don Morocco though that I wasn't gonna be able to do anything with. I couldn't sell it. It was ruined. And I saw someone had turned a Don Morocco into Bret Hart. I'm like, okay, let me try that. And I wanted to try and turn my Don Morocco into like this. If I could kind of compare what I did to this, yes, this is God in comparison to what I did. But again, I'm not going to show that off because it's laughable. It's humiliating. It was a joke of a figure. And I knew that. I mean, I don't have that type of skill to create my own figures. It was for fun, just kind of see how well or how much I could do. Even the simplest of things, like painting King Kong Bundy all black, I suck at. So trying to do anything fancy was not going to happen. So we're kind of still looking at original look for the figure. Head, is it an upgrade in the head? I don't think so. I don't know. John Ruggiero. When I think about Kane, we seen that Big John Stud Kane figure that I got, right? And when I talked about that figure, I talked about the red Kane with like the black lines. This right here is the Kane that I think of when I think Kane. So this particular look, this paint scheme on that Big John Stud would have been absolute freaking killer. Now, what they did with that Kane was spectacular. I mean, I'm not going to bash anything about it. Damn near perfect figure. Probably is a perfect figure. If I did have a downside, I don't know if Hillbilly Jim is necessarily the best play pose or look for a Kane. Now, there's this thing that John does with his figures where when you look at the head mold, like the hair, it's always super flat, right? It's flat and it's smooth and it's that part is nice. I really enjoy. I like that the mask is kind of like built onto the face, right? So that's non-removable. So you don't see Hillbilly Jim. All you see is just the cane. This is a spectacular look. And I don't mind Hillbilly Jim's play pose. I think Hillbilly Jim is a spectacular figure in and of itself. And I've always said I don't think that figure gets enough of appreciation or love as it deserves. Kane, I like the fact that somebody kind of said like fake Diesel. That Kane as fake Diesel did a better job portraying the role of that character than the real Diesel, than the real Kevin Nash. Finally getting Isaac Yankem as Hasbro-esque with Mattel Retros was nice. He got at least one Mattel Retro figure, if not two. I think just one though. But I've said if Hasbro continued on, didn't lose its contract, Isaac Yankem would have been made in the mid-90s. Kane would have come along in the late 90s. So I thought, Hasbro, he would have had some amazing Hasbro figures. Getting Kane as LJN is awesome. I do think if Ram Treasures 10 years from now is still making custom figures, there's only so many characters in the 80s you can make. I think they're going to have to start branching off into the 90s with characters, and I do think they will eventually make a Kane. Just my feelings on the matter, but that only determines on if they're around making figures 10 years down the road. If they stop 3 years from now, let's say, no, I don't see them coming, but possible. This is exactly the Bret Hart that I wanted to get done. If it was the original head mold, I would have given this a little bit more love. There is one Kane left in tournament. I know there's multiple Bret Harts in round 2, and I don't think this Bret Hart would necessarily defeat any of his other Bret Hart counterparts. So this is a tough match. I do overall covet Bret Hart more than the Hillbilly Jim, I guess. So looking at it from that standpoint, because yes, it is at the end of the day a Hillbilly Jim figure. And like I said, John did a freaking immensely incredible job. This sucks. I am going to go with Bret Hart. Now, I have just named 100,000 things that I do not like about this figure. Do I see this figure going more than a second round? Probably not, to be honest. And that's what sucks, because in this tournament, I've always said it's not just about who's good enough to win that particular matchup to move on to the next round. You've got to think ahead. You got to think about who's in the next round. Is that figure good enough to beat those in the next round to move on to the following round and to the round after? This figure is good enough to beat so many in round 2 to move on to round 3. But I kind of feel like there are those out there, and I do know there are many viewers who do want to see Bret Hart more. So, am I catering to the fans? Maybe a little bit. I do place Bret Hart higher than a Hillbilly Jim, essentially. So, I gotta rethink this now. Also, freaking Kane is like super freaking tall, right? And dimension wise, I just think that this figure is just too small to be Kane. That's one of the things, one of the biggest gripes I've had with this particular figure is size comparison. If there was some way to make this figure taller, now you can't exactly go out and use Big John Studd every time. You can't exactly go out and use, I mean, Paul Orndorff maybe. I mean, you're gonna be painting over his abs and everything. So, but then you got to deal with that stupid play pose. Greg Valentine. I mean, if you're chopping off the head and putting something else on there, like so, possibly. Because Greg Valentine, I mean, would still be a good play pose for Kane, playable. I don't know. Brutus Beefcake might work. Brutus Beefcake has a very similar pose, so. But Bret Hart is going to win this matchup. That was a tough one. Piper versus Jim Duggan. And this is funny that this is the first time that we're seeing an original Roddy Piper in this tournament. I thought because I have so many Roddy Piper customs. I mean, I've looked at least, I mean, there's 4 down there. I got another one over there at least. So, I mean, that's at least 5 Pipers minimum that I've looked at already. But this is a Roddy Piper off my main display. Original kilt. I mean, it does have a little bit of paint loss here, but overall quality looking figure-ish. That's fine. Roddy Piper, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. And what sucks about having your favorite wrestlers in poses like this is that you can't really ever use them. And I think either that's either very smart marketing or that's very dumb marketing. Because I get it. You got over 70 figures and you got to come up with 70 different fighting poses so that each of your figures are unique. Got it. And there's only so many poses you could put these guys in. Okay, understandable. Now, if you know that Roddy Piper is one of your most beloved characters, you want to put him, and this is the smart marketing idea from one thought process. You put him in one of the worst fighting poses imaginable, because even if fans absolutely despise that figure to no end, they will still buy the heck out of the figure. They will still play the hell out of that figure because they love the character. Now, they take someone like Outback Jack or someone that they don't know anything about, right? Or they don't really care about. I don't know. I'm kind of looking at the wall. And George Steele, maybe? I don't know. Ken Patera? I don't know. But let's say someone like Outback Jack, who hasn't been around, who wasn't really around that long. Or Ted Arcidi. Again, basically someone who wasn't really around that long, probably didn't have that much of a fan following, and put him in a play pose like this that nobody cares about, that the people find it horrible. If Hulk Hogan was in this play pose, it would still be one of the most beloved figures and be one of the most played with figures ever. So from a marketing standpoint, yeah, you're gonna put your best characters in the worst poses because they're still going to be purchased. Now, if you take, again, your Outback Jack, and you put him in the pose that he's in now, which is easily one of your greatest LJN poses ever, one of the best looking aesthetic poses, one of the best looking figures, period, people are going to be forced to buy that figure because it is a freaking fantastic figure. So, from that mindset, I can understand to a certain degree, but it's freaking crazy. Because Outback Jack is basically this a little bit. So, Jim freaking Duggan. Jim Duggan. Whenever I see Jim Duggan in blue, whether I look at this figure as a custom LJN or if I look at his big rubber guy figures, I don't think about Jim Duggan like this. I think about Jim Duggan Hasbro. Because everything I think about when it comes to wrestling figures or wrestling characters in general falls back to the 90s Hasbro action figures. And I think about him with black boots, and I think he's got blue knee pads as well. So that's how I think Jim Duggan. So when I look at this, I'm like, well, that's not what he wore. But realistically, yeah, it is. And I know his original figure was already eliminated in this tournament, which sucked. And I don't remember who he came up against, but there are certain figures in this tournament you want to see go seven rounds. You want to see go several rounds. And a 4-round push for this figure, solid. 5 rounds, great. Perfect. 3 rounds or less for one of your key figures of the LJN line is really bad. And it's funny how just a very small, minute change in positioning, because you look at these figures, I mean, they very closely resemble one another, right? I mean, they're not an exact mirror of one another, but again, they are very closely resemble one another. Trying to get the right position of this. So, how can you have like a top 10 worst LJN figure ever made, and probably be like a top 20 best LJN ever made? It's weird. Now, back in 2022, just before I created my channel, or maybe after I created, because I created the channel in like February, and I started posting videos, I think, first or second week of March. I was filming all of these videos, and I never posted videos before because I didn't know how to post videos. So I was like filming video after video after video, and finally I sat down and on my computer and I posted my first video. I'm like, oh, well, that ain't too bad. So I ended up posting like 7 videos in one day. Came back the next day, posted like another 9 videos because I had all of these backlog of videos I had made. And I really screwed myself because, again, I never made videos before, so I never really knew about analytics and things like that, right? So I didn't sit there, post one video, wait a day, 2 days, 3 days, post my next video. So, people weren't watching my first video, second video. So all those videos I did really horribly, I can understand why, because I really screwed myself on that one. Plus, being brand new, never posting a video, and then all of a sudden making this my favorite LJN tournament. It's something I should have done towards the end of the year after I've established, a view count and some subscribers and whatnot, and people knew what my channel was about. And I think that's why when I came back at the end of the year, it wasn't just about doing it the right way with lighting and a backdrop. It was also about I was doing it for other viewers who just finally joined up and doing it for them as well. So, and that end of 2022, early 2023, I kind of count that towards the 2023 year for the tournament. So, even though I didn't have my favorite LJN tournament in 2023, that second one kind of counted towards that year. I'm kind of talking because a lot of time when I don't have an answer, I have to start chatting because I don't know. I didn't really realize how difficult this matchup was. I honestly thought this was going to be a wash, that Jim Duggan was going to run away with this. And then I kind of looked at the pose and I'm like, wait a minute, how can I complain about Piper when I'm not complaining about Duggan? They're literally the same damn thing, or very closely resembling. But I mentioned before when I started when I wanted to do the my favorite LJN tournament, I've never had these figures, and I wanted to talk about play pose and playability and all that, right? Grips and whatnot. There are certain figures that I used constantly, like kind of looking at the wall. Like Roddy Piper, I used a lot. I used Jimmy Snuka ish. I used Steamboat a lot because these are figures that I looked at. And I'm like Jesse Ventura, I guess, because I knew they're bad figures. You could look at their play pose and just know that these are absolutely despicable, horrible figures. But you want to sit there, you want to play with them as much as humanly possible because you want to hopefully that with enough play that you get used to them and you start feeling differently and thinking that, okay, maybe they're better than what you give them credit for. They're all bad. Roddy Piper, I mean, he was serviceable. Maybe not as horrific as the others. Snuka, you can't do anything with. Jesse Ventura, he's nothing more than a darn squash match type of figure. Eventually, over time, someone like Terry Funk moved up for me. It's not as bad as the figures I gave him credit for. Hercules is nothing more than a squash match figure. Orton is nothing more than a squash match figure, pretty much. So, Ricky Steamboat isn't really an enjoyable piece. Yeah, you're going to get a lot more enjoyment from it than others, but not exactly front line. Another reason, I'm a huge fan of Roddy Piper. You guys know that. And I want the opportunity to talk about Roddy Piper as much as possible. But it's just not a better figure than Jim Duggan. If I choose Roddy Piper over Jim Duggan, every freaking viewer that watches this channel is gonna tune out. Like, what the hell am I doing here? No, Jim Duggan, obviously now is a easy answer. Well, not easy, but he is the answer, best answer moving forward. Jim Duggan, obviously a fan favorite, just not as much as Roddy Piper. I just want him to have a better figure. Last matchup is from Robert Jackson, and this is Jim Neidhart Pink as he squares off against Hercules Hernandez. So, earlier in the tournament, we saw the Jim Neidhart in straight purple, right? And I mentioned that there were a couple of figures I sent to Rob, a couple of Jim Neidhart figures, and I bought them because they were pretty beat up figures, and the goal was to send them to Rob. I'm like, hey man, I got these figures. I want you to paint them up for me. You know, obviously I'm paying him for his work, and the goal was to try and turn around and resell the figures. And sometimes, and that's the thing, guys. If that's what your intentions are, if you build these relationships, you got friends and whatnot that paint for you, let them know what your intentions are. If your intention is to resell the figure, tell them, hey man, I'm going to resell this figure. That way, it's not like you're surprising them or whatnot, or big, hey man, he hates the figure, he had to sell it. No, I bought the figure with the intention of reselling it, so I sent him to be repainted for that. So I wanted it to, I wanted it to be repainted pink, the other pants purple, and I wanted to resell them. And I got the figures in, I looked at them, and the paint job was just so freaking good that I'm like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't resell them. I just wanted to hold on to them. And eventually I did put them up on my site for like a high number, like $350. And I knew they were never going to sell for $350. And I kept them up for a long time, and eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to sell these guys. What am I thinking? I'm never going to send a best offer or anything on these guys. They're awesome. So I eventually took down the listings, and now they're gonna stay with the Robert Jackson Customs forever. The one thing though, when you look at like the original Jim Neidhart, right, and you even look at the one I got back from him with the purple pants, and then you look at this figure, I've seen this a lot. I've seen this on LJN figures. I've seen this on Hasbro figures where they have like normal dark, not dark, but they got like, skin tone, like brown, peachy skin tone. But then you got like this skin tone, which is what is that called? Oh man, there's a name for like metal. Ah, I remember Mike Wolf using it when he was describing like old metal. I'm trying to think of the word. It's gonna kill me now. If I'm sitting here, gonna struggle with it. It's right at the tip of my tongue too. The word Abercrombie keeps coming into my head, but that word is like, I feel like it starts with an A. Not Abercrombie, obviously. Not acetone. Albatross. I'm gonna start throwing out A words until it comes to mind. I can't think of it. So annoying. It's like patina, but it's not. I'm frustrating myself. But anyways, the kind of ghostly skin tone. I'm like, what is it? What is it about painting the figures that where some of the figures come out like that, where the skin tone comes out differently? Maybe the skin tone, maybe the skin itself was like really really badly marked up and whatnot. Maybe he had like cause I don't really remember, but maybe he had to paint the skin or something. So maybe that's what it came out. Why that one looks like this and the other one just looks normal. And then Hercules. Well, what can we say about the Hercules Hernandez figure? Love the freaking Roman warrior outfit. Obviously, this didn't last too long. I guess it was like too much weight or something to be carrying around with all this extra leather and chaps and stuff. But this is a fantastic look. When I look at figures like Bob, when I look at Bob Orton, and I look at Hercules, and I think they look absolutely spectacular. Their play poses suck. They could be serviceable, playable figures if need be, but their play poses are straight trash. And then you got like Harley Race, which isn't a playable figure at all, but his outfit makes him look absolutely spectacular. This is a killer look. Then you got the Mike Sharp figure that kind of resembles this. It's just that the play pose isn't good at all. That's what it all boils down to. Plus, I'm not used to the whole tone of whole long hair and a mass amount of facial hair. I mean, yeah, he did have like goatee and beard and everything, but like not as thick and prominent as what you see here. At least I don't remember him with that much, and I remember him more with the shaved type head, blue trunks or black trunks type of deal. Bobby Heenan as manager. Freaking Bobby Heenan had everybody. My God, Bobby Heenan, his stable reminiscent of like 1927 Yankees. I mean, superstar after superstar after superstar. That man could do no wrong. He knew exactly who to choose to bring into the Heenan family, so to speak. But yeah, this is a really good, awesome piece. He's not going to beat Jim Neidhart. Not even close. But it doesn't take anything away from the actual figure. I mean, the figure is fine. Like I said, you're sitting down, you got this figure, you're going to make use out of it somehow. Sometimes you might put the bad figures together, put like Bob Orton versus Hercules type of deal or something. Just because. You can have like the really fun matches, the matches where you get to sit there and play for like an hour and a half, like Big John Studd versus Hulk Hogan type of deal. And then you get matches like Orton versus Hercules that are like 5-minute matches, 3-minute matches. Just because They're both really terrible, but you just want to be able to bounce them together. All right, so that's going to eliminate this video. What did I say? Episode 39? So, one more episode, and we will be done with round 1. That's crazy. 40 videos to complete 1 round. My very first tournament, 26 episodes. The complete tournament was 26 episodes. And that included, but I was doing 5 matches an episode. Here I'm doing 4 matches an episode. And I think the second, because I think the second tournament I had 25 episodes. Maybe. Or maybe I had 27 episodes. Yeah. But I had a bunch more figures, though. So I'm wondering how that happened. But maybe I had more than 30. I don't remember. But I remember that first tournament had 26 episodes. And I'm like, I'm kind of looking at 26 episodes for the complete tournament. And here, 40 episodes just for the first round alone. I'm like, yeah, I could never do this again. I could still do my favorite tournament every year with all the new figures I get in. And I could always include the new figures that I didn't have in previous tournaments. And I could also kind of choose like my favorite figures, my absolute favorite pieces that have a bona fide chance of winning every single time. Kind of make a fun tournament, but nah. As far as doing a full on every figure type deal, that's just way too much. Could never do it. Couldn't. Guys, that does complete this video. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time. Goodbye, everybody.